So let me ask you in just a few words, what is your core platform?
The core platform is to get America back on track again, both at home and abroad, with strong leadership that knows how to bring people together. Americans aren't divided, our political establishment is. They want to see us solve the problems of energy and health care, secure America's future in the world, make us less vulnerable, less isolated in the world. We want to once again feel good about our country and leave a generation coming along with more opportunities than they're going to get under the present set of circumstances. Let's
talk about one aspect of that. The Democrats now seem in a race to try to come up with a plan to get out of Iraq. Ayman al-Zawahiri, the #2 al-Qaeda leader, says that the bill that you Democrats sent the president is proof of the American defeat in Iraq. Don't you, and we'll talk about the details in a moment, but does your party run the risk of being seen by the American people as they were after Vietnam as soft on national security?
Not at all here. Again, this is a civil war going on in Iraq. This is not the United States versus al-Qaeda. It's Shia versus Sunnis tearing each other apart. That's gone on for centuries, but particularly here right now. The United States is being asked to, in a sense, referee a civil war. And at $2 billion a week, $8 billion a month, Americans believe that we have done all we can possibly do, and Iraqis have to decide whether or not they want to end this civil war and the sectarian violence. The idea that this is a winnable conflict by the United States, every military leader from the very outset have said, this is not a situation where there's a military victory for us here. That was the conclusion of the Baker-Hamilton report, the conclusion of General Casey, General Dempsey. Every senior military official who's been involved, Chris, in Iraq has said from the very beginning, there is not a military solution to Iraq here. So the point has arrived, I think, for all of us that the status quo is unacceptable and that we should begin redeploying our troops.
Senator, if I can just press this point, though, here you have Zawahiri in a video. He seems to think that al-Qaeda has a stake in this fight.
Well, I know they may think that, but I'm not going to let my foreign policy be decided by Mr. al-Zawahiri. Obviously, he's playing his game there. The question he'd probably like to see is stay down there, bogged down at the cost we're increasing here, the loss of lives, not to mention the isolation of the United States. The status quo is unacceptable. The American people are so far ahead of Washington on this issue. They want a change in policy, a change in direction. We should begin that redeployment, in my view, and begin to do the things we should have been doing a long time ago, recommended by senior people of both political parties, senior knowledgeable people about the Middle East, and that is to begin to work the diplomatic, political, economic side of this issue to help Iraq achieve that stability we've been talking about. You're not going to achieve it, Chris, when you've got 60% of the Iraqi people think it's all right to kill Americans, 80% think we're the cause of the chaos in their country. You need a change in policy here. That's what we're trying to achieve. The president wants the status quo. That makes us less secure and more isolated, in my view.
Senator, let's talk some practical politics here. You have an impasse now between the White House and congressional Democrats over this war funding bill. Everyone agrees money is going to begin to run out probably by the end of this month. Would you support a stopgap measure as a compromise that would send the president money and give him a way to sign a bill?
Well, I'm a supporter of the Feingold-Reed legislation, Chris, which says that you begin redeploying and complete that process within a year. I think that kind of clarity is needed both at home and within Iraq. That's my view on this issue. Now, I respect what Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi have to wrestle with here. You've got a caucus and trying to produce the necessary votes. I'm going to either offer or support Senator Feingold if he'll offer that proposal when the supplemental comes up this week or next week, whenever it comes up here. If that doesn't work, I'm willing to look at other issues here, but I think we need to press ahead here with a conclusion, a change in strategy here. Just going along after one try is not satisfactory to me.
Are you going to insist on sending him a troop withdrawal, which you know he isn't going to sign, or would you accept this idea of a compromise? Probably political benchmarks that would put conditions for political progress on the Iraqi politicians, and if they failed to do that, then you would take foreign aid, not military aid, away from them.
Well, that's a possibility, Chris, to go forward here. But I think first and foremost, we want to lay down a clear marker here. I think there are a growing number of Republicans in the Senate and the House as well who are very uneasy about the president's policy here of no change, no benchmarks, no date certains here. I think they're beginning to move and nervous themselves because they're hearing from their constituents as well. This is not a Democrat versus Republican, independent versus conservative or liberal. The American people, by and large, across political parties, believe a change in policy in Iraq is absolutely essential at this juncture, and that we can't continue forward here. So we may disagree politically here, but remember where the American public is on this issue. They want a change. They think we're getting less less secure, far more vulnerable today, Chris, than ever before, and they want to change in this policy. I think we ought to stick with that idea here. We're going to provide whatever support our troops need. No one's going to deny them the kind of support they need during this period of transition here. But the change in policy is essential, and the president is really isolated on this issue.
One of the leading Democratic candidates, one of your rivals, John Edwards, says that Congress should keep confronting the president, keep sending up this troop withdrawal bill, and he's even running this ad. Take a look.
Don't back down to President Bush. Send him the same bill again and again.
Senator, you took a shot at Senator Edwards, saying you wish that he were still in the Senate to fight this himself. What's your point, that it's easy to be tough from the sidelines? Well,
yeah, again, it was all due respect. We could have used John's vote here in the Senate on these issues here. But look, a leader speaking out on these issues is certainly, I accept that and welcome that here. I just from time to time getting lectured by people on the outside when people like Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi and others are trying to fashion a change in policy here. It's a little easy to take those shots. That's all I meant by that.
Let's talk about the Feingold bill and what this would do. This is offered by one of your colleagues, Senator Russ Feingold. This would start pulling out troops within 4 months after it's passed and would cut off all funds for U.S. troops by March of 2008, although it would allow money to continue, among other things, fighting al-Qaeda. And that's what I want to ask you about. When al-Qaeda is responsible for some of the most savage bombings in Iraq now, inside some of these markets and business areas in Baghdad, inside the Parliament building, how can you pull the vast majority of our troops out and continue to fight al-Qaeda?
Well, look, again here, let's go back to the point here. It is a civil war. If you don't accept there's a civil war in Iraq, then you may come to a different conclusion. And again, if you don't accept what everyone else has said over the last 4 years, there's not a military solution.
But wait a minute, Senator, you certainly would agree that al-Qaeda is involved and they are killing people in Iraq, aren't they?
They're an element there, Chris, but you don't let your whole policy in Iraq be determined by that. What are we doing? Why don't we back in Afghanistan? That's where al-Qaeda is resurging and the Taliban is reemerging in the epicenter of al-Qaeda here. We've now taken troops out. We're weakened there. They're regaining their footing in the very place we should have been going to in the first place here. Come back to the point, Chris. This is a civil war in Iraq. That's the problem here. And we're being asked to referee, to resolve a civil conflict. The Iraqis have to make that decision. Al-Qaeda elements are taking advantage of that. But the assumption this is all al-Qaeda, I think, is very, very wrong.
Well, no,
I don't know if anyone who believes
Senator,
that.
I'm not saying it's all al-Qaeda, but it certainly, you would agree, is somewhat al-Qaeda. And the question is, if you're going to pull the vast majority of your troops out of Baghdad, how do you fight al-Qaeda when al-Qaeda is killing people in Baghdad?
Well, because the whole idea of us staying around indefinitely here to deal, why not go to the place where al-Qaeda really poses some threats? Why not go after Osama bin Laden, where we know he's hiding out, instead of being bogged down in a situation where we're being used and isolated and radicalizing elements in that part of the world more and more every single day. A change is necessary here, Chris, and clarity in that change, I think, is what has been missing here. I think too many Iraqis, Sunnis and Shias, would like us to stay there to satisfy their own particular interests. I think it's after 4 years, after 4